If you had to guess my favorite genre, what would you guess? Hi friends and readers, another week, another reading vlog, and I thought this week I might challenge myself. I try to read around 2 books every week while working 40 hours a week full time. This week I actually have Monday and Tuesday off. Today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday, because we are actually fostering a dog and we brought him home for the first time today. We knew that was going to be a lot of work, so we took 2 days off. But because of that, maybe I have some time to read, maybe I don't at all. Either way, it's going to be an extra challenging week because we're also fostering the dog, but I'm forcing myself to not read a genre of my comfort. So we're gonna go to Fable, and I'll tell you a little bit about my comfort genres to tell you we won't be reading those this week. Looking at Fable, so far this year, I have read 48 books. Of the 48 books I have read, the top 2 genres, which I also knew prior to looking at this, first is romance at 26 books. And the second is literary fiction at 13 books. Now, I would have told you that fiction and romance were my favorite genres to read, and then I would have told you my third favorite was probably fantasy, and that does fall under the next one, except for the next 3 genres are all at 4 books only, according to Fable, and that's fantasy, sci-fi, and sports. I honestly would say that the sports really should be included in the romance counter because it's all sports romance, let's be honest. But nonetheless, romance and literary fiction are our top 2. So we will not be reading in the romance or fiction genre this week, which is really hard and challenging for me sometimes because when you have a busy week or a chaotic week like fostering a dog, you might want to read something you know you'll enjoy, but let's just make it extra hard this week. I also saw a friend this past weekend who gifted me some used books they had at their house, and one of those books was not romance or fiction, so I think it's a perfect time to go ahead and pick it up and start reading it. Now that it's on my shelf, I'm going to be reading First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. We have officially hit 24 hours of fostering a dog in an all-cat home, so definitely an adjustment, but I think everyone's doing well, us, the cats, and the dog. And because I took a day off, or 2 days off, now it's Tuesday, I was able to make it a little bit of the ways into our first book of this reading vlog. As a reminder, I couldn't read romance and I couldn't read fiction, so we ended up on mystery thriller. I have not read a mystery thriller at all this year so far, apparently, according to Fable, and I honestly don't know why. I would not go outwardly and say I don't like reading mystery thriller, I just haven't done it much. I would honestly describe them to be very fast-paced, and when I say easy reads, I don't mean easy as in not profound and not articulate, because I could never write a book in my life. For me, easy reads just means that it's a good time for me to read, it's very fast-natured, very vengeable, and I like that, and that tends to be what happens to me with mystery thrillers. And honestly, I'm not the kind of person who reads into every small detail in a mystery or a thriller book. I don't often guess endings or plot twists, and that makes them sometimes more exciting for me. So I'm excited for this week's book. I will say I'm bigger into adult-based books and not YA books. The only really big mystery thriller series that comes to mind, I do think was YA that I read. Up on the shelf where this one was the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I had a decent time, and there goes the dog playing with his toy, but I thought that the YA sentiment is what held me back from rating it so highly. So we're gonna give it a go this week with an adult mystery thriller, and that is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. I have not read any other books by this author. I was looking through their backlog after picking this one up just to see. One of them did look familiar, the cover looked familiar, and that was Anatomy of an Alibi, but again, haven't read any books by this author. And also reading about them in the back of this book, it looks like at the first time this book was printed, it was their debut adult novel. They had already written 6 young adult novels. So after some further digging, I was gifted this book by a friend. I went to see a friend this past weekend, and their mom, I think, had a bunch of random books laying around the house that they had already read and were just going to give to their little library. And I was like, wait, some of these books I want to read. One was Taylor Jenkins' Read book, and then the other was First Lie Wins. I had seen this cover before. It's a Reese's book club pick. I went on to Goodreads to check out, you know, if I had seen this cover before, if I had heard about it, and I had. It had had a 3.99 out of 858,000, almost 859,000 reviews. So this book definitely was popular at one point. It came out in January of 2024, so I think I'm just a little bit behind on reading it probably when the popularity hit, but there's never a wrong time to pick up a book unless you're book slumping, I feel. I also saw that some of my friends who I follow on Goodreads had rated the book about a year ago, and a lot of my friends had rated it 5 stars, so I have good hopes for how this book's gonna go. I think on Goodreads it said the book was 340 pages, but the book that I inherited is large print and this one is 415 pages. But it's large print, so I imagine it being the perfect length book at 340 if it weren't large print. And with mystery thrillers, with this book in particular, I'm on chapter 15, which is page 188. So I am just approaching halfway. In like 20 or less pages, I'd be halfway through this book. I think this is a book I could finish all the rest of in the next 24 hours, definitely, because right now we're building all the background and what the author is letting us know about our characters. And I'm sure the next 50% is going to be the mystery thriller part, the plot twist, and figuring out the ending of the book. I don't want to spoil anything that would happen in this book, even having been about 50% of the way. So I'm just gonna read you a quick synopsis. Evie Porter has everything a nice Southern girl could want: a doting boyfriend, a house with a white picket fence, a tight group of friends. The only catch is Evie Porter doesn't exist. So we're following our main character whose name is Evie Porter, except for we go through this now and then timeline where we really learn Evie Porter is not her name. She takes on these disguises or these aliases across the last probably 10 years. And that's because she works for this mysterious man named Mr. Smith. And it's basically a shady business where she gets hired to do these shady jobs. She's been hired to essentially make acquaintances and become the girlfriend of Ryan Sumner. Essentially, her boss will send her these discreet messages to say, here's your next job, you go to Louisiana. A few weeks later, you'll get another message that tells you the person of interest is Ryan Sumner's, and then you'll get another message of basically, here's the job and here's what you need to do. She sort of had a mess up on her last gig, so this job with Ryan is very important because if she messes up, she doesn't know what would happen to her job or her future. I myself am getting to know Ryan as she is getting to know him, being his girlfriend, secretly completing this mission. I don't know what the mission is. I don't know what Ryan does that's bad that she might potentially need to take care of, whatever that means. I'm hoping we'll find out in the last 50 pages and see if this lives up to the 5 stars that all my friends rated it. Oh boy. Get some water. It's Wednesday. I'm wearing my Last of the Bugs shirt from the Noah Khan concert, which was so incredibly fun. I'm so glad I got to go to that. And here we are. We have just finished First Lie Wins by Ashley Elson. And I'll preface, this is gonna be like a 4-star read for me because I just absolutely flew through it in less than 48 hours. Saying that, I'm like, man, why don't I read more adult mystery thrillers? I don't know why, it's just never the first thing that comes to mind when I'm looking at my next read, or even on my TBR. I go on my TBR and I might have my digital TBR. On my digital TBR, I maybe have 2 or 3 on there, maybe. I just need to start looking into the genre more. So if you have any mystery thriller recs, adult mystery thriller, let me know in the comments, like, what's your favorite? What's a good place to start? First Lie Wins. I filmed a little clip while I was reading yesterday on my phone. Okay, I'm filming on my phone because my cat and I was reading without filming. I'm on chapter 20, page 303, and I just now hit me that I could potentially guess who her boss, Mr. Smith, is. And I have a guess, and when I have a guess, I'm always completely wrong. I'm not gonna tell you my guess because that would spoil things for you too. But I'll try to remember to let you know if I was right or not. I know I'm not gonna be right. But it took me all the way to 100-ish pages left to even think about trying to make a guess. And I let you know that I had some guesses on who her boss was, what this type of mission was, this shady job she's doing for her current boyfriend, Ryan Sumner. You know, all the details that I can't really say because it would spoil all of this book to you. I was wrong. I told you I'd be wrong, and I was right that I was wrong. I'm always wrong. And I knew I was wrong not that many pages later because the main character Evie was also going down the avenue that my brain was going down, but actually in writing and walking me through it. And I was like, well, I know if our main character Evie is walking me through who I thought it was, then it's definitely not that person, because that's just not how these type of books work. I just never get there, and I think that that's why I end up having a good time. And you know, with these mystery thrillers, the author is letting you into details that they want you to know. And in this book too, the author would even bold things. Like, for instance, when the author talks about the title of this book, in sentence, she says, there's an old saying, the first lie wins. That is bolded. So the author even bolds things for them to stand out to you, but not the things that you really need to have bolded, like not the things that are really gonna let you in on what's happening, if that makes sense. So while you think the author is letting you in on things, even they are lying. That's literally the whole premise of this book. And I'm a big fan of the ending of these mystery thrillers, where now we know the plot, we know the twist, we know who the boss is, we know what the long game was for, and the author is just laying it out on a platter. Here's all the things you missed, silly little goose. Here's where you're supposed to end this story. And I like the ending of this one. I think that it wasn't too crazy. I think that it was just crazy enough to make sense. And I liked where our main character Evie ended up, or whatever name you want to call Evie, because the name changes every time Evie had a different job. And then now in the then timeline, you went back in time to also piece together how we made it 10 years in the future on this current job with a current boyfriend, and all of those past gigs lead up to where Evie is now. You're like, okay, Victoria, you just explained nothing and mystery thrillers all at once. And I'm glad I am to service. I think I'm gonna ride the high of the mystery thriller. Really the only other genre here that I know I can't read right now, I probably couldn't pick up a fantasy. And I don't think that that's true, that it is not a comfort genre of mine. I think just so far into the year, second half of the year, I'd probably pick up more fantasy. So we're gonna stick with the thriller section, I believe. I can't handle a sci-fi right now. I think that would definitely put me in a book slump. Let's go mystery thriller, but also psychological thriller. I think it's time that we pick up another book by Frida McFadden. Let's read The Inmate. We made it to Thursday. Little doggy's still doing good. He's right there staring at me, and my cats are all in here watching him. So if you hear whining, sorry about that. Currently on my lunch break, so it's like 12:20 something. And I wanted to give you an update on the second book we chose to read this week. And that was a psychological thriller by none other than Frida McFadden. Now, does Frida McFadden ring a bell? Because I feel like most people have seen, heard, read, or know the name Frida McFadden, or one of their books, or now a movie based off the book by them. I have read two other Frida McFadden books. I read The Housemaid, and I watched that movie as well. And then I also read Never Lie. So I think that with Frida McFadden, there are a million books in their backlog, and every time I turn, Frida McFadden is releasing another book. I think one recently came out with the name Debbie in it. Dear Debbie, maybe? I think that two is hardly any in the scope of this author and how many books they've put out. So I'm excited to be reading my third book by them. If you've read a Frida McFadden book and you have a favorite, let me know which one I should pick up after this. Now, if I am understanding or remembering correctly, I feel like someone told me that Frida McFadden is not their real name, that that's their pen name. So I'm gonna do a little bit of research on that real quick. Yes, Frida McFadden is a pen name, and she's actually a physician who specializes in brain disorders. Wow. And the pseudonym is for privacy, especially in a medical career and professional boundaries. Also haven't read The Housemaid, the rest of the Housemaid series. I forgot to say that. So if you've read beyond book 1 in The Housemaid, let me know if it's worth reading the rest of them. I think that the second book may have already been picked up for a movie as well. What I particularly like about this author and why it was easy to pick this book and this genre for this week is that their books are on Kindle Unlimited. I do pay for a Kindle Unlimited subscription. It's like 11 or 12 bucks a month. So I feel personally like I need to read 1+ books to get my money's worth of that subscription. And Frida never fails me in that so far 3 for 3 on all of them being on Kindle Unlimited. I've said that we are reading The Inmate by Frida McFadden, a psychological thriller adult. Came out in 2022, so it's been a few years, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that that's that long ago, 4 years ago now. And it has around 380 something pages. Let me see, 387. One reason why I think a lot of people like Frida McFadden books, and maybe in particular The Inmate, is because they put it in their author's note at the beginning of the book, and that even though my books are thrillers, a genre that traditionally has a lot of dark elements, I do my best to keep them as family friendly as possible. You're not going to come across graphic scenes of violence, mostly because they know their family members will be reading. And I think that that leads to a larger audience of people enjoying your work. And me in particular, I gotta be on a good day if I'm gonna experience some graphic and explicit scenes. I don't see that in my everyday life, so reading about it might not always be the easiest. Not the case with these books. I am actually only on I've read 86 pages, and that is 23% of the way. So I plan to make a lot of leeway in this book in the next 24 hours, but that's really easy to do because such short chapters. Based off my Kindle speed and how I read, each chapter has been less than 4 minutes long. Going back to Goodreads, it looks like I marked this as want to read in October. I don't remember what year, probably last year. What is The Inmate even about? In the most non-spoiler thriller way, we are following Brooke, and Brooke has recently accepted a new job at a maximum security prison. Yes, Brooke is going to be the nurse practitioner for all of the inmates in this facility who need any help visits or need anything regarding their health. They go to the nurse. The nurse before mysteriously left, and they hired her without even basically doing an interview. So they needed the help. Brooke needed the job. Here we are. However, something a little sus, something we're figuring out about Brooke is that they accepted this job knowing good and well someone who tried to kill them is an inmate at this prison. You heard it right. Their high school sweetheart from 11 years ago tried to, you know, and she knew that before taking this job. So now we're just sitting here like, okay, this is clearly morally and ethically not right. Let's see how this goes. This inmate is also notorious for being a bad inmate in that they have a lot of behavioral issues, a lot of fights with other inmates. So they're probably gonna wound up at the nurse. This inmate's name is Shane, and we are doing a now and then timeline. So we're going back 11 years ago when Brooke and Shane were in high school. They had this sweet high school relationship. They're going to this party together, and then flashing back to present day, he's in prison. She's the one who testified to put him there. And all we know is that he murdered people. We don't know how many people, who those people are yet, and if this is all a fair and just society we live in that put him in prison. And the last thing I'll say before we keep reading is that I have an early 20% of the way through guess on something that might be happening here. But again, I'll tell you if I was right or wrong. I'm suspicious that I'm wrong. Gonna be in the video. We made it to the end of this vlog and the end of The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I'll just start out by saying it fell short for me. I found the main character Brooke to be quite insufferable. It was one of those stories where, you know, it's a mystery thriller, psychological thriller, so you're expecting the twists and the turns and the misleading and the author leading you down a road that's just not the right one. So that way they can flip it all on you at the end and explain what really happened. And with this and this inmate and Brooke going through all of these traumatic things, like the event that happened in her past, seeing the inmate again after years and years and years of not seeing them, and then what happens towards the end. She was clueless. And I get that's the whole point. They're supposed to be clueless because otherwise it wouldn't make sense or it wouldn't be the genre that it is. But she was just so insufferable. She would ignore everything. All of the clues, all of the hints, everyone was lying to her or telling the truth to her, and she could not sparse that out for herself. Every time she's like, well, I don't know, that's not true, or that can't be it, no way. And you're like, girl, read between the lines. But I think with all books in this genre, you want to finish them because even if the characters are falling short for you or the story is falling short for you, you want to know how it's going to be explained, even if you've guessed it. Well, I guess if you've guessed it, you don't want to. I didn't guess it. Of course, I never do. I'd probably rate this at 3 stars. It's definitely not my favorite of the 3 now books that I've read by this author. It's probably my least favorite. Then I'd say Handmaid. No, I'm thinking of The Handmaid's Tale. Housemaid and Never Lie. It was also one of those scenarios where when you think it was going to be resolved and that was the end of it, there was still 20% of the book left, so you knew what had to come next, basically. And that kind of just made the ending a little bit slower for me. And then quite frankly, besides the main character, there are some other characters in this that I just found like they gave me the ick, so I couldn't root for them. There was no one to root for. I think that's the best way to explain why it fell short for me. So I'm glad I read 2 books out of my comfort genre. Now, did I go way out of my genre comforts? Kinda. Were there other genres like science fiction that I could have read this week? Probably, but I was trying to avoid some sort of book slump, and overall I think this is a great genre if you want some quick reads, page turners, things of that nature. Now it's Saturday, I think I'm just gonna go enjoy the rest of the day and maybe start another book tomorrow on Sunday and another reading vlog. That's all. Bye for now.